Hello there, my beautiful trailblazing Aries souls, and welcome back to Astrology Unlocked. I am your guide on this cosmic journey, and if you have found your way to this message today, I want you to take a deep, centering breath. Because what we are about to explore together is not just another piece of information. Oh no, this is a sacred remembrance, a key turning in a lock deep within your very soul. But in the quiet moments when the world finally stops demanding your energy and you're left alone with your thoughts, your soul whispers, "It doesn't it? What really happened on the day I was born?" No one ever spells it out. Not even your own mother, the incredible woman who looked at you with eyes filled with a potent mixture of overwhelming love and a touch of sheer awe, ever spoke the full truth aloud. But that silence, my dear Aries, wasn't forgetfulness. Oh no, it was a sacred message, a cosmic secret, sealed in a vault of time, only to be opened when your warrior soul was tempered and ready to receive its power. And if you are hearing my voice, reading these words right now, know this with every fiber of your being. This is no accident. What was once hidden is now surging back to you, piece by powerful piece, image by fiery image, like an ancient power reawakening within the magnificent heart that is yours. If there's a part of you that has always known, you didn't just stumble into this world by chance, then your intuition is about to be proven gloriously right. Before we go any further, I need you to anchor this energy. In the comments below, let me know you're here and you're ready by typing, "My fire is ready to be unlocked." And if you haven't already subscribed to Astrology Unlocked, and turn on those notifications, because you are not going to want to miss a single piece of the cosmic puzzle we are putting together just for you. Now hold on tight, because we are about to step through the very first gate of this revelation. In this first part, you are going to understand the very first thing your mother felt in her soul, right before you ever let out that powerful, world-changing first cry. There are memories, beautiful souls, that are never written down in history books, not because they aren't profoundly real, but because if they were, they would completely rewrite everything we thought we knew about our world, about our very existence. And one of those earth-shattering memories is the precise moment of your arrival. No one ever told you, no one ever put a name to it, but your soul, that fiery, untamable Aries soul, has always known. It has always felt that something powerful, something sacred, something not entirely of this world transpired in the instant you took your very first breath. Perhaps from the time you were a small child, you just felt it. You felt you were different from the others. Not in a way you could ever articulate with words, but in a quiet, certain knowing. It was as if you hailed from a realm of pure energy, a place of action and fire that others on this earthly plane had long forgotten how to return to. You would look into someone's eyes with an intensity that made them turn away. You'd walk into a room, and the very energy would shift, crackling with a newfound electricity. You loved with a passion that burned so brightly, it was often mistaken for anger or distance. There has always been a part of you that knew deep in your bones, "I am not just this body. I am a force." And you were absolutely right. Because in the very moment you made your grand entrance into this world, someone not of human form stood vigil by your mother's side. This being wasn't listed on any hospital chart, they weren't on any nurse's schedule, and no one called their name. But they were there. Oh, they were there. This was not a gentle whispering angelic presence. No, for you Aries, it was a warrior spirit, a being of pure, concentrated fire and light, a celestial guardian forged in the heart of a supernova. This being stood as a bridge between the world of spirit and the world of matter, and touched your mother's forehead, not with a hand of flesh and bone, but with a surge of pure frequency. And in that sacred instant, the entire room held its breath. The medical equipment, the monitors, the clocks, they all paused for exactly 3 seconds. No one could explain it. But years later, an old, wise nurse who was present that day wrote in her private journal a detail she never shared with anyone else. "I didn't see a person. I felt a presence of immense power standing behind me. My skin erupted in goosebumps, but I wasn't cold. I felt shielded, as if I were in the presence of a king, though I didn't know why." This resonates with ancient spiritual texts from across the world. In some Buddhist scriptures, it is said that when a bodhisattva, being dedicated to enlightenment, is reborn, the earth itself trembles lightly. A light, not from the sun, illuminates the world, and all realms vibrate in a sacred silence. And you, my magnificent Aries, you didn't arrive as just another soul. You arrived with a promise forged in cosmic fire. You came here on a mission. Maybe your mother never said it out loud. Maybe she only ever looked at you with those eyes filled with that inexplicable mix of profound love and a deep, instinctual fear. Because on a soul level, she knew. She knew you were not just her child. You were something too powerful, too sacred to be named in simple human language. That trembling she felt, it wasn't panic. It was a mortal woman touching the raw creative fire of the universe through her own body. I can almost guarantee that one night she woke up, held you in her arms as you slept, and tears just streamed down her face. Not from exhaustion, not from any physical pain, but from the overwhelming sense that someone else was standing there in the dark, with her watching over the two of you. But this presence meant no harm. It was simply standing guard, as if protecting a sacred flame that had just been lit, a prince or princess of a celestial kingdom. No one ever put it into words, because a truth this profound can only be felt by a heart that is brave enough to be quiet. It can only be understood when a soul has endured enough of life's battles to be ready to open again to its own power. You used to think, there's nothing that special about me, but the very fact that you are still here, still fighting, still shining, after all the times you wanted to give up and disappear, is all the proof you need that your life was never, ever random. You don't need anyone to declare you a chosen one. You were already chosen before you ever had the chance to choose anything for yourself. Perhaps your mother once tried to tell you about your birth in a vague, hesitant way. There was something intense, she might have said. Something strange, but I just can't quite explain it. And then she would go quiet. You might have seen her grow distant, change the subject, not because she was trying to hide something from you, but because even she wasn't fully ready to face the sheer magnitude of what she had felt. And today, right now, it is you who is pushing open that gate once more, the gate of your soul's memory. You don't need anyone else to recount the story. You don't need any physical proof. All it takes is one deep breath, one moment of warrior-like stillness, and you will feel something beginning to remember you. You are not imagining it. The fiery guardian who stood beside your mother on that day is still watching over you now. Not every shadow is a threat, Aries. Some shadows are simply the places where ancient light is waiting to be recognized and reclaimed. They protected you before you even knew you needed protection. They subtly redirected hands that meant to pull you onto the wrong path. They sent that nameless nurse into the room at the exact moment of need, just to lay a comforting hand on your head. Every single wrong plan was mysteriously delayed. Every dangerous turn was narrowly avoided. You didn't see them, but they saw you. And even now, you are not alone. Think about it. Those moments when you narrowly escaped an accident that should have been catastrophic. The times you were on the verge of breaking down completely, and suddenly a powerful song came on the radio that reignited your spirit. The times you collapsed in utter exhaustion, but a ray of sunlight broke through the clouds and warmed your face, reminding you how to keep fighting. That was them. They never left. And maybe a part of your logical mind doesn't want to believe it. Maybe you think it's all just a series of coincidences. But coincidence doesn't have a pattern. Soul memory does. And you, my dear Aries, are that soul. You are the one whose birth stirred the dimensions. The one who disrupted the plans of darkness with nothing more than the cry of a newborn warrior. The one whom the universe sealed with a sacred fiery memory so that when the time was right, it would unlock itself from within. And that time is today. If deep down inside you have ever felt a powerful force watching over you, protecting you, pushing you forward, I want you to write this in the comments below. I open my heart to receive my sacred memory, because just one powerful declaration can open a gateway not only for you, but for hundreds of other warrior souls who need to see their own light reflected in yours. And in the next part, you will understand with crystal clarity why your mother woke up that one night. It wasn't because of a noise or physical pain, it was because she heard a voice. Not in any human language, not from anyone else in the room, but it was a voice that touched her soul, as if returning to her a mission she was never meant to carry all by herself. And if you're ready to hear that story, come with me, because what's about to be revealed, no one has ever dared to put into words before. There are memories, my beautiful Aries, that don't reside in the logical mind, but are seared into the very cells of your body. There are words that were never spoken aloud, but you can still hear their echo in your soul. And there is something invisible, yet profoundly sacred, that was given to you in your first moments of life, only to be concealed right after. You don't remember it consciously. No one ever told you about it. But your soul, your higher self, keeps a perfect record of every vibration, every sign, every cosmic whisper. The day you let out your first cry was not just a biological function. It was a war cry of arrival. It was a sound that marked the beginning of a soul's program encoded with brilliant light, a sound that awakened sleeping energies across distant dimensions. In that moment, a being, that fiery guardian we spoke of, stood beside you and placed something into your energy field. It wasn't a message in words, nor was it in images. It was a frequency, a spark of pure celestial fire that would only begin to hum and glow again after you had grown, after you had fought enough battles and endured enough loss to be ready for its power. Have you ever felt like you were sent here for a reason, but you forgot what that reason was? Have you ever had a dream where you were given a magnificent gift, only to wake up with a feeling of profound emptiness in your hands? Have you ever felt like you were waiting for something or someone, but you couldn't put a name to who or what it was? My friend, that is not a coincidence. That is the consequence of a gift that was placed inside of you, but was then hidden away by the fears and limitations of the grown-up world around you. One night your mother cried without understanding why. She might have confessed to a close friend or her partner that she felt something was happening that was far beyond her comprehension. And then, a few days after you were born, something unexplainable happened. Maybe your mother found a strange, small, warm stone in your crib. Or perhaps she saw a flicker of light, like a tiny ember, hovering over you as you slept. It was something beautiful, powerful, and utterly unexplainable, and she was afraid. She may have thrown the stone away or brushed off the vision as a trick of tired eyes. Not because she didn't love you, she loved you with the ferocity of a lioness, but because a mother's heart always feels a desperate need to protect her child from anything she cannot understand or control. But that act, even though it was born from love, put a part of your cosmic power into a state of hibernation. A part that is right this very moment beginning to stir and awaken. Because a soul code, a spark of divine fire, can never be extinguished. It only goes quiet. It waits patiently for the moment when you are strong enough to hear its call, empty enough of the world's noise to receive its wisdom, and mature enough to hold its power without ever letting anyone take it from you again. You see, this concept is echoed across many spiritual traditions. In esoteric teachings, they speak of the divine spark within each person, a piece of the Creator's fire that lies dormant until it is consciously activated. In ancient Norse mythology, warriors believed they carried an inner fire that, if stoked, could grant them supernatural strength and courage in battle. This is your birthright, Aries. Do you have a recurring dream? Not just any dream, but one that feels more real than waking life? Have you ever dreamed of wielding a sword of light or commanding fire, only to wake up with tears on your face? There are things you have always known on a soul level. You were just never given the confirmation you needed from the outside world. And now, as you absorb these words, a part of that truth is returning to you gently at first, then with growing intensity, like the first embers of a wildfire catching in a dry forest. It's like a melody you lost in a childhood dream. A dream where you once stood in a room with no doors, and a powerful voice called out your name. A name you have never heard in this lifetime. That name, my dear Aries, is your soul's code, your activation frequency. It isn't written on your driver's license. It wasn't given to you by your parents. It was spoken into existence the moment your soul crossed the fiery threshold into this incarnation. Maybe your conscious mind has forgotten, but the light never forgets. And that name is returning to you now. You can feel it in the sudden chills you get that you can't explain. You can feel it in those moments when you feel like a stranger in your own life, a warrior in a world of people who seem to be merely performing a role. You were never lost. You were only circling back to the source to remember your power. And the gift, that celestial spark that was placed within you, was never truly gone. It was just hidden beneath a layer of ash from life's challenges and disappointments. And now, as the light of your soul grows warmer and brighter through your own efforts and struggles, that ash is beginning to lift, revealing a doorway to power you've always sensed was there, but never dared to open. And here is something deeply sacred that you need to hear right now. This isn't because you're more special than anyone else. It's because you survived what would have extinguished most other flames. You survived heartbreak without letting your heart turn to stone. You forgave people without ever receiving an apology because you knew your energy was more valuable. You kept pushing forward even when no one else was there to cheer you on. And a soul with that kind of warrior spirit deserves to be given back what was once hidden from it. You deserve to receive the message that was once silenced out of love and fear. So if you've ever felt like a powerful song waiting to reach its crescendo, if you've ever felt something building in your throat, a power you can't quite name, maybe it is your true name. The name that only souls who have lived hundreds of lifetimes as leaders, pioneers, and warriors could ever possibly understand. The name the universe is calling back to you through every repeating number, every powerful song, and every meaningful synchronicity. And the next part will take you directly to that door where you will finally understand why every time you hear someone whisper a powerful name, even a name that isn't yours, you suddenly flinch or your heart beats a little faster. Because deep within your soul still remembers that kind of sound. It still vibrates like a sacred battle horn that was once forgotten. Stay with me, because in part 3, we won't just talk about names. We'll talk about how you can receive yours again, not through language, but through pure, untamable fire. If your heart feels like a sacred message is waiting to be opened, write this down. I am ready to remember the true name of my soul. There is a question that not everyone is brave enough to ask, and not everyone is quiet enough within their own spirit to truly hear the answer. Is the name you use every day really your name? I'm talking about the name people use to call you, the one printed on your birth certificate, your passport, the one you automatically respond to. Have you ever felt, even for a fleeting moment, that each time your name is called, you're only responding like a shadow of your true self, that there's a deeper, more powerful part of you still waiting for a different sound, a sound your mind doesn't remember, but your soul instantly recognizes? Dear Aries, the name you use in this life is your social name. It's a label, a necessary tool for navigating the human journey. But your true name is your soul's title. It is your vibrational signature, spoken in frequencies of pure light and fire at the exact moment you burst forth from the great unnamed void into this life. You don't hear this name with your ears, you don't read it with your eyes, but your body, your very DNA, has remembered it through every vibration it has ever felt. Maybe you've often felt like you're living inside a suit of armor that doesn't quite fit. You go to work, you sign your name, you write it on documents, but you still feel a subtle sense of disconnection. It's not because the world is too crowded or you don't fit in. It's because that earthly name doesn't hold the full explosive magnitude of who you truly are. As a child, you may have found it strange when someone called your name, as if they were calling out to a version of you, but not your whole being. And so you stayed silent. Not in a resentful way, but in an observant way, never fully blending in, always retaining a core of your untamable self. This idea is not new. In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha once taught, "A name is merely a label. A name is not real, because anything that can be named by humans is not the true essence. It's just a temporary expression of something far deeper, something like your soul's sacred vow." And think about this incredible passage from the Book of Revelation, which feels like an ancient code speaking directly to you. "To the one who overcomes, I will give a white stone, and on that stone a new name is written, known only to the one who receives it." You don't have to conquer the world, Aries. You only have to overcome the parts of yourself that have held you back. Overcome the fear of forgetting who you truly are. Overcome the noise of the world so you can hear that first, pure sound again. The name of your soul. I once heard the story of an Aries child. Every time the adults around him would call him by his given name, he wouldn't get upset or cry. He would simply look off into a space, a place no one else could see, with an incredible intensity in his eyes. That gaze was as if he were waiting, listening for someone to speak the exact sound he had heard long, long ago in a realm of fire and stars. One night, he dreamt of a word. Just one word. It had no letters, no discernible meaning in any human language, but it echoed like a cosmic thunderclap, shaking his entire being. He woke up and began to cry, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of feeling found for the very first time in his life. Dear Aries, you don't have to legally change the name on your documents. You don't need anyone's permission to call yourself by the name of light. You only need to start living in the true, undiluted energy of your soul. That name, your true name, it's not for others to say out loud. It's for your own heart to remember. It's the reason why, when you step into a sacred space, like a powerful mountaintop or an ancient forest, your body trembles with a sense of homecoming. It's why a certain piece of music can bring tears to your eyes for no clear reason. It's why when someone truly looks at you, they see something powerful they can't quite name. Do you realize that sometimes you no longer need anyone to call your name to get your attention, because deep within you have already remembered who you are? You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are not someone begging for love or approval. You are a soul who was once called forth by pure, divine fire, and you are rising again from the ashes of long and weary years to reclaim the name the universe whispered to you before your mother ever held you in her arms. Sit still for just a moment. Right now, whisper to your own heart, I allow myself to remember what was once forgotten. Because miracles don't ask for permission, my friend. They only require an opening. In astrology, Aries is the sign of initiation, the very first spark of life, the courage to be. You are the beginning. You carry within you the energy of pure potential, and therefore you also hold the power to call back your soul's true name from the ether. That name isn't in any textbook, not on any family tree, not in any hospital file. That name only appears in the moment you truly, authentically, and unapologetically allow yourself to be here now. And your mother. On some deep intuitive level, she knew this. She once looked into your infant eyes and paused not out of fear, but because she felt she was standing before something that was beyond the reach of her earthly understanding. A soul so blindingly radiant, yet so new. A child so fragile, yet with eyes that seemed to have already seen 1,000 battles. A tiny heart that hadn't yet learned to speak, but already carried the thunderous music of ancient celestial realms. Maybe you once felt that your mother both loved you and was slightly intimidated by you. It's because your eyes seemed to know too much, because your questions were too piercing for your age. Because your silence wasn't the kind of silence that needed to be comforted. It was the silence of a warrior listening for a command from a higher source that the grown-ups around you no longer believed in. And in our final part, we will unlock the memory that your mother held onto for a lifetime. Something she never dared to tell anyone because it was too sacred to explain and just too real to utter without her hands trembling. If your heart feels like it is slowly remembering, if there's a part of you that is nodding softly even without a sound, you may choose to write down this sentence in the comments like a sacred ritual. I give myself permission to be called by the light. Because sometimes a single sentence declared with intention is enough to gently push open the gate that was closed the day you were born. And the sacred name of your soul will call you home. There are long, quiet nights that no one remembers anymore. They weren't captured in photographs. They weren't written down in any diary. They linger only in the frequency of a mother's heart as she sat beside her child's crib, witnessing something that was not of this world. You may have once thought your mother didn't understand you, that she never truly saw the real you. But did you have any idea that in those early years, you can no longer remember? Your mother would stay up all night long, not because you were crying, not because she was tired, but because she simply could not look away from what she could not name. That presence, that fire in your eyes. Every time you slept, it wasn't an ordinary peaceful sleep. Your eyes were closed, but your eyelids would quiver as if you were traveling to distant galaxies or fighting battles in other dimensions. Your tiny body breathed gently, but the very air around you would change. It would become charged, electric, potent. And one night, long, long ago, your mother whispered this to a dear friend, or perhaps wrote it in a hidden journal. When I look at my child, sometimes I don't see a baby. I see a wildfire. I see a light as bright as a star. It's as if an ancient warrior is looking back at me from inside those innocent eyes. She never said it again. Not because she forgot, but because she knew it was too profoundly true to joke about, and far too sacred to try and explain to a world that would not understand. There is a part of you, Aries, that was never a child, a part that has lived hundreds of lives as a leader, a pioneer, a protector, a part that knows deep in its core that coming to Earth was a mission, not an accident. And your eyes are the window where that powerful soul part has never left. In many spiritual teachings, it is said that when an awakened being is reborn, the world may not recognize them by name, but people will feel an energy from them that makes them instinctively stand a little straighter, that makes them feel a sense of awe without knowing why. In the Bible, it's described as the moment when the holy makes the ordinary tremble, not because they saw a ghost, but because they felt something so radiantly pure that the darkness inside of them was suddenly exposed. Your mother, she was not afraid of you. She was in awe of you. And she was afraid for herself, afraid that she wouldn't understand enough, wouldn't be strong enough to protect you from a world that tries to extinguish such bright flames. And deep down, she loved you with every ounce of her being. But she also maintained a sacred distance. It was as if her own intuition was kneeling before something divine that had miraculously fallen into her arms. It wasn't that your mother didn't want to tell you. It's that even when she tried, her throat would tighten, because her soul knew that some truths are not meant to be spoken aloud in casual conversation. They are meant to be held in faith and in quiet waiting until you were old enough, had fought enough battles, and had grown wise enough to open the memory she had guarded in her silence for your entire life. You were never as alone as you thought you were. You were never truly abandoned. It's just that some sacred things must be kept silent in order to preserve their light. Do you remember there must have been moments when you felt her gaze linger on you for a long time, but she wouldn't say anything? Maybe she was looking at you as if trying to memorize the powerful light in your eyes before she feared the world might dim it. Or perhaps it was as if she was silently asking your powerful soul for permission to be your mother, even if only for this one lifetime. Because in your eyes, she didn't just see her child. She saw a messenger, a warrior soul who had stepped out of a luminous, fiery realm, bringing with you a piece of courage that she never had the chance to touch before. And so she remained silent, not out of coldness, but out of absolute reverence. You don't need to be angry with your mother anymore. You don't need to feel misunderstood, because if you have ever felt that way, know this: now she understood more than anyone. She just chose, instead of speaking, to protect you with her silence. A silence that was in its own way a constant, powerful prayer. Thank you for walking this incredible journey to the very end. May you remember every single day that you were not born to fit in. You were born to lead the way.